Hey everyone, I was talking to someone today and just was thinking about these appreciation logs that we've used. And I thought I'd do a quick little tutorial on how to do an appreciation log. But before I do that, let me just talk a little bit about why we might do that. So, obviously, right now, we're all experiencing loss. We're all experiencing a type of mourning. Some of us are mourning a little more intentionally than others. So if you're not mourning intentionally, I encourage you to do so. Maybe I'll make another video about that and maybe talk a little bit about lament in the scriptures and whether it's the Psalms, the book of Lamentations, the prophets, because it's very important that we actively mourn the things that we lose and the sorrow and the sadness that we have. So I'll do something on that. But when we are feeling sad and we're struggling with these negative emotions, it can be really important for us to also cultivate joy in the process. And gratitude we call gratitude the pathway to joy. So if you want to experience joy, the way you get there is through thanking, and I would say thanking the Lord for the good things that are going on. And the scripture tells us to rejoice in the Lord always. Again, I say rejoice. And it says to present your prayers and petitions with thanksgiving. And that when we do that, we experience the peace and the joy of God. And the Bible also tells us that in Philippians is where that is that in Christ that we can do all things, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And what Paul is talking about is not winning a basketball game. He's talking about enduring hardship and dealing with lack and, being content in every situation. And the way that Paul can be content in every situation is that he's cultivating joy no matter what his circumstances are. So let's just dive in. I'm going to pull up the appreciation log here, and I'm going to post a link to it beneath this video. So this is our appreciation story log that you can see here. It's pretty straightforward. There's 7 elements to it. And I'm going to just go through each one and explain why they're there and how we use them. So what I want you to do is just take a moment and think of an experience you had recently where you experienced joy. I would suggest that sometimes you specifically think about experiences of joy with the Lord, and then sometimes intentionally think about experiences of joy with other people. And when I say experiencing joy, just when did you feel happy? When were you feeling loved and accepted? When were you feeling just at peace with your surroundings, with the Lord, with someone around you? So I'm going to pick one from yesterday. So I'll type it here. So yesterday, my daughter and I went to grab some fast food and ate it in the park. All right. So that's my situation. So you could go into more detail here. I could talk about where we were, what the day was like, it was a sunny day, but it was cold. So we ate our food in the car, and then we went out for a walk afterwards in the park, in the sunshine, on the grass, and the things that we saw. I could go into all that detail here if I wanted to. But the idea is describe the situation, because what you want to do is you want to get your brain kind of back into that place where you were. And that's what all of these things are geared towards. Because one of the things that we know is true from brain science, for example, what we know is true is that if you did a brain scan of your brain while you're experiencing a joyful moment and you see all the parts of your brain that are firing, when you relive that moment by telling it in a story or hearing it back to yourself in a story, the same parts of your brain start firing as if you're in the moment. And there's a part of your brain that can tell the difference, but there's a part of your brain that can't tell the difference between you being in the moment and being in the story of the moment. So we're going to share the story so that we can get back into that brain space of joy. Okay. So the next thing is, how did you feel in the story? And, this is, for me, I felt happy. I felt connected. I felt grateful for the time. I was feeling kind of like, I'm not sure how to describe this, but it was kind of like a renewing sense because my daughter, the 5 of us are in a house, but it was just able, the 2 of us could go and spend time together. So I'm not sure how else to put that, but I'll put it like that. So what we're doing is, again, we're identifying these emotions that we experienced in the story, and we're putting them on paper. The next thing is, how did I feel physically in this story, in my body, right? And so I'm going to list two different types of sensations. So the first one is like, I could feel the sunshine. I put fell, but I mean feel the sunshine. I could feel the wind. My stomach was full. I had a big juicy hamburger and a milkshake, and it was good. And I haven't had any fast food in a while. And I know it's bad for you, but I like the way it feels and tastes in my body. We were able to walk together. So I felt, my daughter next to me, and I think we even, held hands and whatever. So you put those kind of feeling words in there. But then I also want to kind of challenge you a little bit to think about what are the types of things you felt. Where did you feel the feelings, right? Physically, where did you feel your emotions? So, sometimes people will say if you're scared, right? Maybe you go like this and you kind of feel it in your neck and shoulders and you hunch up. Or if you're scared, you might feel it in your stomach, like queasy or butterflies. Or maybe if you're happy, you're feeling it in your stomach. We have these two systems that are connected, and our brain and our gut are actually very similar systems. So a lot of the things that you feel emotionally, you feel in your stomach. But maybe I was like, I was feeling like a warmth in my chest, and feeling like, I don't know, like my head was lighter. That's the best way I can describe it. But these are just your words of how you describe it. And then what actions did you do? Well, to demonstrate what it is like you to do, and if you did not act like yourself, then how would you have wanted to act in that moment? And what we're getting at here is just the idea of, sometimes we often don't act like ourselves. So we want to identify when we do act out of our true selves. Like, what is it really like me to do in a moment like this? And so sometimes we don't. So for example, I've shared a story before where what I really wanted to do was like shout for joy, but I was inhibited because I didn't want people to, people would freak out if I did that. But it's what I would have done if I'd been alone, for example. Or maybe what I could have done even around people if I had been a little less, concerned about my image or whatever. So if I were to talk about what it was like me to do, so some of these things are really simple. So I smiled a lot. We went for that walk. So we, even though it was cold and chilly, I was like, let's go for a walk. So initiated a walk, being outside. I love being outside. And so when I can initiate being outside, if I could spell it right. And then, what would it be like me? I think, like holding hands, that's something. What would it be like me to do in this story? I think I largely acted as myself. There was some laughing going on. If you guys know me, I love to laugh. And there we go. So I'll stop there. You could add more. Then the next is, how do you, and that means how do you, God, feel about me, or how do you feel about this? So what I would do is I would take a moment and pause. I would close my eyes and I would just say, Lord, how do you feel about me in this moment? Or how did you feel about this story, this thing that happened? And I would try to dial in on that. Now I'm doing a video right now, so it feels kind of awkward to do that. But let's just say I got a sense that God was pleased with me as a father, and also He was that it was good to see me outside when we're inside so much and enjoying His creation. So I'm kind of making this part up because I'm not taking the time in the video to go into that. But that's, you want to get a sense from the Lord, God, what What do you feel about me in this moment? What are you sensing about me? And then listen. So listen for a word, listen for an emotion, an image. He might give you a different way to engage with that. And then the last thing is, God, is there anything you want me to know about this? And again, I'm not going to go through it right now, but the things that might come up is, maybe God would say something like, "You need to do this more often," or you can do this more often. Maybe giving me the sense of the freedom to do this, even though we're in quarantine. So what we did was allowed. I wasn't breaking any of the recommendations. We even had our face masks with us in case we encountered anyone. Or maybe it would be something like, this is how I am with you. I want to get away with you and just do things together and spend time with you. So God will tell you different types of things about what happens. So I'm just going to, for example, let's say God was saying, I want to be with you alone also. So then I would pick a word for what this memory is going to be called, and I'll just call it lunch with my daughter. And then at the bottom it says bonus. Tell the story to someone today, or if the story is about that person, write them a note and tell them. Keep it less than 3 minutes. As you tell the story, make eye contact, include feeling words, body sensation words, how you felt and to act in the story. And not only will you make someone's day, you will also strengthen your capacity for emotional resilience in the space of stress and challenges. Because what happens is, as you share this story, a couple of things are going to happen. So one, as I mentioned, your brain's going to start firing as if you're in the joy, okay, in the moment. But what happens is you tell it to people and you title this story. So it's, lunch with Sarah. So as I tell Sarah the story, and as I tell Sonia the story, and as I tell others the story, then I'll be able to essentially be able to say lunch with Sarah, and it's going to trigger all the emotions of the story without even having to tell the story again, because I'm training my brain to respond to that trigger with all those feelings. Now, here's the other cool thing. In our body, in our brain, there's these things called mirror neurons. They do all sorts of things. But one thing that's true is that if you put a brain scan on my head, and I'm telling this great story, and you put a brain scan on the other person who's hearing it, their brain is going to start to look like my brain. And this happens in all good storytelling. And that's what makes stories so wonderful for us, is that it puts our brains in the place of the people in the story. So you'll be rebuilding or building your own joy, but you'll also be building joy for somebody else, because they get to experience your joy when they hear your story. So again, stories are very powerful. And by the way, the mention of the brain science stuff, this is true. Cultures have known this was true for thousands of years. And I'm just mentioning the brain science because it's kind of a confirmation of what we already know. And this is why the Lord tells us to tell the stories of God's greatness, tell the stories of his faithfulness, tell the story of your salvation. This is why we're to do that, because it actually produces in us faith, it produces in us joy, it produces in us gratitude. So that's how you use the gratitude sheet, the gratitude story log, and I will post it below the video. All right, thanks for listening. Hope you enjoy it.